you have horns in your head, like you're a horned boy.
At that age, everyone is. Hey, welcome to the Experience Point. Look at this fancy setup we've got. We've got really nice microphones because we have, for the first time, a very special guest. This is my friend Josh from the Still Loading podcast.
The only shirt in existence.
Yeah, is it the only one?
Yeah, my future sister-in-law made it for me. It was really nice of her.
Oh, that's adorable. Today we're going to be talking about Eco, not Ico. We'll get that one out of the way first. And Shadow of the Colossus. We have a double feature episode. I may split it into two videos because I have a feeling I'm going to talk a long time.
It's probably going to be at least 3 hours long. I mean, you think about it. That's 2 games. Yeah. It's at least an hour for one. And let's be real. It's Shadow of the Colossus. It's probably going to be a 2-hour-long video episode of my podcast. Whatever.
I could talk until the apocalypse about that game. So
this might happen soon. I would.
Hey, all right. Let's get going.
We're going to be talking about not just Ico. We're going to get into that. But we're also going to be talking about Shadow of the Colossus because they're connected. They're made by the same developer. And with me today, Andrew from the Experience Point. He's been on the podcast numerous times before. You were on ranking the Final Fantasy VII characters. Yep. You were on Donkey Kong 64. I feel like there's at least one other that I'm forgetting. Sega Genesis.
Sega Genesis and Metal Arms was our very first one.
Yes, it was. And I had to have you on for this one because you were the first person to ever talk to me about Eco and Shadow of the Colossus.
Wow.
And I know how much of a fan you are of it. So, Andrew, thank you for joining me on this episode.
Thank you for joining me. We're having
we're starting crossover thing.
A shared universe of this is the first episode in the MC or the PCU, the Podcast Cinematic Universe.
The Podcast Experience Point?
Oh, still loading the Experience Point.
Oh, there we go. I joke around. I'm part of the Podbeard network, but I always wanted to create my own network called the Fully Loaded Network. I've made that joke before.
That's awesome.
But I might do that at some point. I don't want to break off because then I feel bad because I'm good friends with the guy who runs the network. And I'd be like, fuck you, man. I just want to go and I'm fully loaded.
Make my own
Mr.
network with blackjack and hookers.
Forget the hookers and the black. Or no, sorry, Bender always says forget everything except the hookers. That's the only through line with all of that. So we are talking about Eco first. We're going to start out with Eco. We're going to see how long we go on that. I'm hoping for at least an hour. We'll see.
Okay,
but fair. It's still a 2-part episode and it's going to go on until next week on the podcast. We're going to be talking about Eco and then branching into Shadow of the Colossus. And we're going to start with Eco. And this is the second, or I guess technically the third to last episode of the summer of PS2.
Oh, wow.
Because it's going to be Eco, it's going to be Shadow of the Colossus the week after that, and it's going to be the big PS2 retrospective, which at the time of this recording has already been recorded. I already did that last week, actually. So nice. I've been working ahead. This is actually the last episode. I just know it's hitting me right now. This is the last episode for my Summer of PS2 series that I'm recording. These 2 episodes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I guess it would be.
I've gotten everything else done.
Yeah.
So you're the last one. Welcome.
Wow.
You're closing it out with me.
What a strong finish with Shadow of the Colossus, and what a lukewarm finish with Eco.
Well, Shadow of the Colossus will be the very last episode with it. But I had to do it with the Shadow of the Colossus because that game is so... It's one of those examples where that everyone points to, that video games can be high art. Because you can't argue that video games are not art. They are definitely art.
You can if you're... What was it? Gene Siskel or Robert
Ebert,
one of them, Ebert. The surviving one.
No, Robert Ebert passed away. He's the one that said it, though.
Oh, okay.
So it's not the surviving one. Oh, God. So let's start out with Eco. So Eco was released on September 24th, 2001 in North America, and December 6th, 2001 in Japan. I thought that was really weird. I thought that was super odd that they did that.
They do that more often than... I don't know about more often than not, but more than you'd think, it being a Japanese developer.
It didn't used to be. Like on the NES and stuff like that, all the games were released before in Japan. Like Super Mario Bros. 3 is a perfect example. It was out for like a year and a half at least in Japan before it made its way over to the States. Yeah. So that's really weird to think that they did that. But so Eco is a kind of like a platform puzzler game. There's some combat in it. But it's not really like a hack and slash.
I'd say it feels more like puzzle platform combat or puzzle platform adventure. Like I felt I was doing puzzles more often than I was platforming, which I kind of got a little bit bored with, to be honest. But
yeah, well, so full disclosure, I wasn't able to beat it in time for this. I got, which is stupid because it's a short game.
It is
it's
really
a very short game. It's like 4 hours or something, 4 or 5 hours.
I think it took me maybe 5, but there's I took my time and was kind of like looking at stuff and, writing notes for this episode. And but there's a trophy on the PS3 version, the HD, which was what I played it on, for beating it in 2 hours.
Really?
Which is like,
well, I mean, feel like a lot of those
crazy to me.
A lot of the what is it? A lot of the combat scenarios you can just run through.
I found myself doing that too,
because you can, as long as you get Yorda, the girl that you rescue in the game. Spoiler alert! Well, spoilers for all.
Spoiler alert! You rescue a girl.
But the spoiler alert for the girl you rescue, Yorda, once you bring her to kind of the gates that like section off the different areas of the game, it defeats all the enemies in that area.
Yeah.
So as long as you can run by everything, and
which most of the time you can.
So it's an interesting game because it was probably one of the earliest ones out there that kind of took a more artistic look at game design. And
yeah,
I'm sure there's others beforehand, but like there was some that definitely, like, I don't know too many other games that started with this level of like artistry to it in terms of visual look.
It was also at a time where things were being, like, I think about, it's 2001. So at this time I was also playing Halo. So a new system had come out, a very powerful like Xbox, like they're stuffing as much stuff in as they can. And like you can, all the different weapons and stuff in Halo and all the grenades and explosions and all these crazy effects and stuff. So while that was also going on, and I feel like that was kind of a trend for games, was like big action stuff and like hardcore everything, particle effects and whatever, they're also making this very like minimal subtractive game. Like the director Fumito Ueda, was that his name? He had said like he purposely designed this game not quite backwards, but almost by like taking things out rather than adding more things in.
One of the notes I have is that it was the first game he directed, and he wanted to create a minimalist game revolving around a boy meets girl concept.
Yeah.
And that's the whole premise. The whole story of the game is you play as a character named Iko. We always said Aiko because that's a very Americanized way of saying it. But if you think about it, like in terms of Japanese pronunciations, I's are pronounced E. So it'd be Iko. So Iko, you play as Iko, and you are taken to this castle by a group of warriors, and you have horns in your head, like you're a horned boy. At
that age, everyone is.
No comment. But they take him to this castle and they lock him in this. It's almost like a coffin, if I remember correctly. It was really dark.
Yeah, it's like this glowing skull-looking thing that's like clearly made to keep him in there.
But then an earthquake happens.
Yeah, an earthquake happens, and like the little slate that he's on is kind of like crumbled. And there's lines of these things, so like he's not the first one.
So you almost wonder, like, is there anybody still alive in those things? Ugh. That's one of my biggest fears, dude. Like, one of my biggest fears ever would be to get buried alive. That's terrifying. You know what I've been learning somewhat recently? It's a bit of a tangent. But I've been listening to a lot of like kind of creepy podcast type of stuff, and
it's getting into fall season where that's appropriate.
And when people would get tuberculosis, it would mimic all the effects of death. Like they wouldn't have much of a pulse, but they would actually still be alive.
Oh no!
So they would bury them, and these poor people would wake up trapped in a box with minimal air.
Yeah,
and there are moments where you can there are stories of where people would exhume graves when they would move graves, and there'd be like claw marks on the box. Isn't that terrifying?
That's horrifying.
That's fucking awful. It's so terrible. Well, they eventually started designing stuff later on to kind of combat that problem, because before there was a vaccine for tuberculosis, or before they figured out how to combat it, and I've heard things where it's like some engineers would put like airways so that way you could still breathe, you could still get air, and you could also yell up. Oh, and there was also other things where you
just starve to death.
But then you could pull a string and it would ring a bell. So the caretakers of the graveyard would hear the bell ringing and realize, that person's not actually dead.
Poor sod's still alive.
That's fucking crazy.
That is terrifying.
And all this back to Iko. Imagine how many poor people are stuck in those things.
Yeah.
Like, they were going to let that kid stay there.
Yeah.
And just die of starvation.
I guess. Or maybe it's some kind of magical. A thing with these games is like not a whole lot. Ironically, there's not a whole lot of hand holding storyline wise.
Yeah, you're right.
Because it's a lot of like inferring and like, was he gonna die? Is he immortal? Was he just gonna?
But it's stone, so it's not like you can. It's not like you can Uma Thurman your way through that thing,
Right.
Like you like Kill Bill.
Not to go on another tangent, but what you said reminded me. I watched this Netflix movie, The Old Guard, last night.
Okay, the Charlize Theron. I
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet.
It's pretty decent action movie, but the concept is like they're immortal, and like someone that was close to her basically got stuck in like an iron coffin and dropped into the ocean. So she's literally unable to die, and she just drowns and wakes up and drowns over and over again for like 500 years.
That's awful.
It is horrible. I'm getting chills thinking about it.
Oh, that's awful.
I decently recommend it though. Like it was like a 7.5 out of 10.
I'll have to check that. I've been meaning to watch more stuff on Netflix recently, but my wife and I, we've been watching. What have we been watching? We've been watching The Fresh Prince.
Middleditch Sports.
I love Middleditch Sports,
so
man.
good.
It's so good. But anyway, so Eco.
Yes,
Eco.
Ico.
So you play as Eco, who is a boy with horns. Such a weird idea. I don't know why. Because I think it was meant to symbolize like that kid is cursed. Like anyone who had those horns is cursed.
Yeah, they say in the beginning
they would do that. That's
like,
why they would imprison them in a stone tomb.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just gonna say they say a little bit in the beginning about like you were the one that was born like this. Like this is for the good of everyone in the village. So it's clearly a superstition that they have, which may or may not be unfounded because you never find out like what it means. It's just kind of is.
Well, and so after you escape, the earthquake happens and the sarcophagus, whatever the hell that thing is,
Skullcophagus.
The skullcophagus. I want to be buried in one of those, man.
All right, just not dropped into the ocean.
Imagine think about that though. Like years later, say they have to move your tomb or something like that, and they like dig you up, and like there's just this skullcophagus right there.
Yeah.
It's like this dude was fucking metal, man.
Yeah, and look at the horns growing out of his head.
And imagine, there's got to be some eccentric person who figures out a way to maybe they get like some solar panels hooked up to their coffin so they could have metal music playing inside
just at all times.
At all times. And so as they get closer to this dude's coffin, because let's be real, it's a guy. No woman would be stupid enough to spend that kind of money.
Yeah, true.
And they get down and you just hear it's like, oh God, Satan's here.
I hope it doesn't sound like that.
Just over and over and over again. Anyway, so you escape and you're exploring around this castle and you meet this girl named Yorda who's also in prison, but instead of in a skullcophagus, as we're going to call it from now on, it's just in a cage. It's almost like a bird cage, and she's just hanging
suspended.
up there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's more than one because you have to jump around from cage to cage, don't you?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because when I started playing it for the first time, like probably a month ago, and then life got in the way, I played that, and then it was like a month and a half or 2 month long gap, and I played more of it like earlier this week and last week. So
I might be thinking of the very end of the game where you are jumping from cages, but the one where you find her in, I think it's just the one. And I think the queen actually does say it's my only daughter. Mm-hmm. But why are there other cages then?
So she might have had other daughters though, other kids. Maybe those were sons.
Well, there's so many theories. Like I'll get into it hardcore when we get into Shadow Colossus, but there's so many really good theories about this universe because it is heavily inferred that they take place in the same.
Well, there is one thing I actually wrote a note where it was one of the reasons why. Hold on, let me try to find it. So the eco continuity was meant to continue with Shadow Colossus. They originally planned it in the testing name of Shadow Colossus was Nico,
yeah,
and which is a goofy portmanteau of Ni is two in Japan, and then Eco. So it's kind of clever actually.
Yeah, it was going to be like a multiplayer sort of version of Shadow Colossus.
Yeah, they had
it was like 4-player.
That's kind of interesting. That would be kind of cool actually to have 4-player. I mean, I don't think it would have had that same. The tone would have been completely different.
Totally,
but it would have been a cool multiplayer game. Like that actually would be a cool multiplayer game. You and 3 other friends trying to take down a giant colossus, and you all have to climb up at different areas and see which ways to, like, and then you could turn that into like puzzles, so like one player can do one thing to allow the other player to climb up further.
Yeah,
Or something like that.
I could see it working, but I'm glad that they didn't, because one of my favorite things about these two games is how like lonely they feel, and how not weak that you feel, but like kind of lost. It's almost like the same charm as my favorite video game of all time, Oddworld: Abe's Odyssey. You're just this skinny little guy with no weapons trying to like get out of this meat processing plant and like save the world, basically. So you're just like, you're not a warrior, like you're a kid in Eco, you're just kind of like a wanderer. His name is Wander in Shadow of the Colossus. They're not particularly like action hero guys. They're just kind of thrust into this world, and you just feel like the despair almost.
It feels like regular people thrust into situations that are above their control, like way above their depth, in order to be able to handle.
Yeah, which was a contrast again to the games of that time, where it was like, you think about 2001 again, Halo, Master Chief. I'm a cybernetic super soldier, and I can flip over a tank with my dick. And like,
that's one hell of a dick.
Yeah,
I mean, after all the shit they did to him, I don't think he has one anymore.
They actually he canonly. I don't think he was castrated, but he basically was like, all the Spartans were like chemically like castrated. Their sex drives were like removed. Just basically,
that's wild.
Yeah. As kids. Yeah, think about it. That series goes places in the extended lore.
Did you read the Fall of Reach book
yes.
or whatever? Yeah, that was a good book. Yeah. That's the only one of the Halo books I read.
Oh, I could recommend a few more.
But so no, the Eco continuity was dropped because Ueda stated that the ending of Eco was too final, so it did not need a sequel. So that's why it doesn't. That's why they don't have that.
Yeah.
Some interesting things though, when they developed the game, Ueda created this 3-minute long demo reel to basically serve. How like you're a graphic designer, so how like a lot of times when you're trying to design things, you have to look at a color palette of things to limit your options, so you don't have. I would assume you'd have,
or like a mood board.
Yeah,
where
something
it's like
that.
It needs to have a certain feel.
Exactly. That's essentially what the 3-minute demo reel was for. Okay. It was meant so that way the designers could watch that demo reel and know exactly the type of tone and setting that Ueda was going for with the game. So I thought that was a really cool way of doing that. I like outside the box design concepts like that, or not design concepts, but like ways to communicate your philosophy to people. One of the not related to video games, but I'm a huge martial arts fan. You ever see the Raid movies?
Oh, of course. You showed me the Raid.
Yeah.
That's how I saw it for the first time.
So Gareth Evans, the guy who directs those movies, the way he does his fight choreography is that he does a video storyboard instead of actually like drawing every element. They get pretty much just a little crappy camcorder. Like they don't need the big professional stuff.
Yeah.
And they work out a fight scene in a studio, like mats everywhere and everything like that. And they film it kind of the way they want it to be filmed in the actual movie. So when they are getting ready to film it on the day, they already have an idea of what they want to do for that fight scene, and they have more of a basis than showing up to a place on set the day of and trying to work out a fight scene through there.
Yeah,
because that's what a lot of times, like Jackie Chan has talked about in his movies. He'll look at an environment and be like, all right, what can I do in this environment? And then he tries to find creative ways to do it.
That's so Jackie Chan, though.
Oh yeah, I mean that's why his stuff is fantastic.
Yeah.
But in these guys, they kind of prep it out a little bit more ahead, and the video storyboard to me was such a unique idea. And actually, they kind of did that for this. It was a video mood board, essentially,
like a proof of concept.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And this is something I think you can relate to. You'll especially because we'll tie your graphic designer background into this. The box art.
Yep, that's one of my notes too.
I actually went down a rabbit hole about this. So the American box art is fucking awful. It is so bad. It's considered some of the worst art, graphic design for a video game, just period.
Yep.
But the Japanese stuff is fantastic. Have you seen the Japanese box art for this?
Of course. He painted it himself.
Did you know what he based it off of?
Yeah, I saw the original. He pretty much ripped it off, honestly.
Giorgio de Chirico, he was an Italian, I think Italian.
Yeah.
He was an Italian painter who had his own movement. I forget what the name of his movement was called, but he created a work called The Nostalgia of the Infinite, and it's very similar. And nostalgia. Come on,
I know.
that is our personalities to a T. We love nostalgia. And that really, I think that artwork really represented the tone of the game. Because what you were saying before was talking about how it was a very empty space, and there's not like any music in that game. It's a lot of just sound effects and like empty hallways and wind blowing and stuff like that. And even the textures that they chose are very simple. There's not a whole lot which can get a little repetitive, but I think that was very intentional for the time because it added to the mood. I don't know. What do you think?
I feel I appreciate the direction that they went in it, but I feel like that they completely mastered it in Shadow of the Colossus, where it is sparse, but it doesn't feel. It almost feels so. I don't know if this is true or not, but I remember reading that they had been developing Eco on the PS1.
Yes, that actually started a couple years prior because Ueda, before becoming director, worked on some of their other stuff, and he was just an animator. And apparently, the guy who headed up those projects said he wasn't a very good animator, but he's a good game director, just not a good animator.
Yeah. So I kind of get the feeling from the sparseness of Eco feels like it is in some way tied to the limitations of the software that they started developing it on, versus in Shadow Colossus, it feels a lot more intentional. It's about 50-50 for me on Eco. Like a lot of times I kind of felt myself going through and looking around like this is empty, but also not in a intentional way, or like in a
Oh, so I can understand that. So Naughty Dog has a similar design philosophy. Or they did they design a space and then figure out a purpose for that space.
Yeah,
and that is fine, but it can leave a lot of empty areas in that space that just you're like, what is this for? Why did you even put this here if you don't do anything? Versus Ratchet and Clank's design philosophy is let's figure out the purpose and design the space around that purpose. And that's why Ratchet and Clank has they're a little bit more linear because of that, because they designed the purpose for it, but it makes it a lot more streamlined. At least I prefer that style because it makes the gameplay super fun.
Yeah, I kind of almost feel like that is what Eco did, was where it's like, okay, these are the things you need to do. Here's how we get you to it. Versus Shadow Colossus has more of that, like, why is this here? Like, you'll find random like temples and stuff, and it's like they serve no purpose, but there's just it helps make the game and the world feel more real.
They do serve a purpose. It's meant to make the world real.
Yeah, but they didn't have much of that in Eco, as far as I took it anyway.
I agree. I think the castle itself, I would say instead, so because we don't want to go too far into Shadow of the Colossus, but you can't help compare the two, but because it's like they are part of the same spiritual series, if that makes sense. Because like we said, they're not actually any direct sequels to it, but the tone of it, like the castle itself is a character in Eco, versus Shadow of the Colossus, the world isn't necessarily a character. It has characters within the world. I'm not even talking about the Colossi. But like the castle itself is a character. So when you have that, you wonder why the castle's there in the first place. You don't really wonder about the specific aspects of the castle, though. I did really like the windmill section of it. I thought that was really cool.
That was cool. Or like the very end when you have to like match the gears up and the spokes start turning and you have to. Oh wait, you probably didn't.
I didn't get that far, but no, that's fine to go into it. I did look up the rest of the story just so that way I would be somewhat prepared for the rest of this.
It kind of expounds on the windmill thing, like. Something that they do really well is the kind of natural progression of...
They iterate on their ideas?
Yeah, where it starts off very small and simple, and it's just move here, jump on this, climb in this, and gradually kind of keep expanding. And like, so there's the windmill part, and then way later on in the game, there's like parts where you're having to climb on windmill-ish things that are like kind of spokes, and then... I don't want to...
No, I get what you're saying, though. What I will say, it's good. It's good video game design when they can take a concept from earlier and then iterate on it further to make it some. I know we've been comparing this game to a lot of other games, and a lot of other media. We talked about the raid movies, but it's kind of
just so funny. To
I know
me.
It's so
comparing
random. The Eco to the raid. It's one of the most violent movies ever.
There's your clickbait title right there. Is Eco secretly like the raid? Fumito Ueda rips or the raid rips off Fumito Ueda from a video game from 20 years ago.
Oh my God, people would click on that and be like, what the fuck? Like,
They'd be like, wait, no.
I don't think that you would get so many hate comments on that. Holy shit. No, they I thought that was what is it? They iterate, but to compare it to another game, Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild picks a very specific, you get a certain number of skills early on, a very particular set of skills.
A very particular set of skills.
I have a set. Is it? What's the line? Is it particular? No, it's I have a special set of skills. Whatever.
I think it's particular.
I'm Liam Neeson, bitches. So let's go there. No. So in Breath of the Wild, you get all your abilities in the first hour or two on the plateau, and then the rest of the game you don't get new abilities. You get a couple from some of the the divine beasts, but for the rest of the game, you're just iterating on those abilities. They find new ways to do things with that. And it versus in Shadow of the Colossus, where they don't give you a lot of gameplay mechanics to iterate with, but they take puzzles and they iterate on those puzzles and try to give you a more challenging version of that puzzle.
That's one of the things I love most about that game too.
With Eco is just the
it's about Shadow of the Colossus, about how limited your skill set is.
Eco.
I know, I'm sorry.
Well, what I liked about the windmill though was that that was one of the games where that was one of the puzzles where you had to figure out a way to climb up the windmill. And I liked that because I was like looking at it, I'm like, I don't see where I'm supposed to go just yet.
Yeah.
But but they give you such a small area to look. It's not like you're looking at this big open plain and then you have to figure out where you need to go.
Yeah.
So I figured out you climb up on the one side and then you can edge over
shimmy
to it. And it was really smart to put that puddle of water, that pond down there, because you lose the fall damage. And Eco swims stupid.
Yeah,
did you watch how he swims?
Stupid.
Did you see the the animations for him and Yorda holding hands?
Yeah,
we haven't even talked about that. That's one of the most important mechanics, and for storytelling too, because it builds your relationship with the girl you rescue, with Yorda,
without even saying a word.
And you just take her hand and
just kind of like. Just kind of like sticks to her.
My favorite thing is like the arm, it like sticks out and like it's like completely stiff, but it's all over the place.
I think it still kind of holds up like
for
its time. And I remember that when I first played it back on the PS2, I hadn't beaten it back in the day, but I remember liking that a lot about it, and I just felt so like attached to Yorda. Like I said, without them talking, like they do talk, but they
don't speak the same language. They don't know how to. They communicate through purely just grunts or body language. And then if she can't get to where if she can't,
I've heard that so many times.
If she can't get to the area that you're trying to motion her over to, she just kind of goes, ah. She just kind of yells her head.
Like, ah.
Oh, it's funny. What I did kind of bother me that she's a little helpless with the fights. I'm not even saying that as because there's always the problems of women's representation in video games. So it's not. She does save him at the end. I saw. So like he rescues her and then she rescues him.
Yeah, there's that really great moment on the bridge when it's starting to separate and you're like, and you've got. I remember anyway. It like really hit me when they were starting to separate, because my literal first thought was, oh no, like I can't make the jump. And I was like, but I have to, like thinking like, because she is so kind of like timid and frail, not thinking that she is going to be able to grab you, because throughout the whole game, like you're basically guiding her and she kind of
you
is
have to help her up all the time.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I'm like, I can't jump because then we'll both fall. So I was like, and I made the jump hoping that I could make it, and she catches you, and it's just like this really nice, like, she like saves you for once to like repay you for all the times that like you help her, and I just love that.
I like, because it just shows how much the relationship is built, has grown, I should say, from the beginning of the game, where she's very frail in the beginning. And she is kind of frail throughout the whole game, but a lot of it, I do like how they wrote a story element into it though, in a sense, because she's imprisoned. Yeah. Like at least like Eco had a life before he got captured, you would assume. He could grow up and do whatever he wanted. But Yorda was imprisoned by her mother early on, which you find out later is so that way she can essentially just reincarnate into her own daughter's body and live young and forever and stuff like that. Really creepy and gross.
That's messed up.
And it's not like she's not weak because she chooses to be, or because I don't know. Maybe maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but it seems to me like maybe that it's not quite as like sexist in a sense, because it's not like she's not weak because she's a woman. She's weak because she was put there by her mother.
Yeah.
She was forced to live in a cage and probably starved. Like, she's thin as hell.
Yeah, I know.
So she probably was starved.
It didn't bother me. I mean, I don't have much room to be bothered by it being a man.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to get like a woman's opinion on it, but
it's just more or less I'm just kind of thinking about the idea.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. Like, we're not really ones that can make that kind of call because we're both men.
Yeah. I really liked her character. Like, as little as you get from her, she's curious, and like I love just kind of like walking around with her, like holding her hand and like seeing her look around at stuff, and like she looks at key things sometimes, and it actually had helped me like figure out what to do at certain points where like she'll be looking at something and I'm like, oh wait, I can climb this. Or like just like when you're walking with her, like you kind of, if you start running too fast, you'll kind of like jerk her, like, and she'll kind of like have to keep up with you.
It's so annoying too. And I'm not mad at her for that.
It just feels like, mean.
Well, yeah, because and it slows you down. And what's kind of impressive if you think about it is that you feel the weight of that.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like you're running hand in hand, like you're pulling someone along, because it's not steady. It's not smooth. You're kind of like, you have this.
It's a little give and take.
What's the term that you rubber banding, it's a very rubber band type of effect, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, there's like a weight behind it, and I this is like such a very specific thing, but like I really like her run animation, like her.
Okay.
She doesn't run like a dainty princess, and she doesn't kind of like stomp around like, you know,
I'm
an
Yoda.
oaf. Yeah, but she like. It's almost like a deliberate, like, this is going to sound weird, but like, watch her feet, like, when she runs.
Gross.
Like,
No, go on.
No, I like feet a lot. I don't knock you if you do, but I don't. But for some reason, like, you can see a lot, like, in the movements of her legs and her feet, and how she kind of like is like almost like a little plat. Like, there's an innocence to it and a purity.
Yeah. Which is interesting because she's been imprisoned by her mom. So it's interesting that
it's probably the first time she's been
that
out
makes
of there.
sense. So because it's probably the first time she's been out, she's experiencing the world for the first time. I didn't think of it that way. That's a good point. That's a good point to make.
There's like this, almost like your whole relationship with her is this like innocent, like Studio Ghibli level, like purity. Like, one of my all-time favorite moments, which happens a lot if you're me, is when you save. You like go and you sit down on the little glowing chair, and you can be like, Papa, to like get her to come over.
You can only save with her.
With her, yeah.
Which I thought that was a really interesting. Even the act of saving the game, it reinforces the relationship you have with Yorda.
Yeah, and the fact that like it discourages you from just leaving her behind. Not that I would hope you wouldn't be heartless enough to be like, all right, peace, bitch. You know, but like you can't go too far ahead.
You got 2 legs.
And so, you can't go too far ahead and start solving problems and puzzles on your own, because then the shadows will come and get her. So you always have to have her around, which just builds up the relationship that you have with her.
And sometimes you need her to solve the puzzles.
Yeah.
I remember in one section, like I said, I didn't beat it, but I remember in one section you actually have to put her on a button so that way a door will open.
Yeah.
And then you can run through the door, find a way to hold the button on the other side, and then call her over. You do that better than I do. You're really good at sound effects.
So I want to do like some kind of voice acting gig. If anyone's listening to this or watching it,
and you like his voice,
and you like my voice, hint, hint, I'm doing eyebrows at the camera that you may or may not be seeing
if you're not watching the video on YouTube.
Yeah. But last thing I'll say about the saving thing is, 2 things. One, I love the music that's there. It's one of the only times where you get music in the game that kind of like, I can't think of it right now, but like it's very like peaceful and calm, and you're just like, this is nice. Like I got to like a good stopping point, and I like sat just listening to the like save music for a while. Like I had just gotten on my phone and was doing other stuff, and then I forgot that I hadn't turned it off, and I was like, I really like this music. But also the other thing that I like is when you load up again, you're asleep. Like Eiko is asleep, and Yorda's just kind of looking around and like
almost like
looking
she's
at
guarding you.
Yeah. You know, kind of waiting for you to wake up, and then you have to push a button to wake up, and then you have to push another button to actually get out of the chair, which I thought was like a very charming little detail, because you'll be asleep, then you wake up, and then you'll both kind of just be sitting there, like almost just enjoying each other's company, and just kind of like both absent-mindedly looking around, and then you get back to the adventure, it's a nice like taking a breather moment.
I agree. I just thought I liked how every aspect of the gameplay reinforced that relationship.
Yeah.
And just what you were talking about, how when you wake up, you're passed out, but Yorda is still awake, and she's kind of looking around. It's because she likes being around you. She feels at ease enough with you to just kind of look around.
They have really cute idle animations, I've noticed.
I didn't notice any idle. I mean, I didn't pay attention to it. I mean, so.
Yeah. I think Eco has like some very like Link ones where he's kind of like fidgety, but like Yorda like will kind of like look at herself and like, you know, like maybe like brush herself off, like little things like that are just like, I don't know, it's just very charming. I remember thinking like, these are cute little animations.
Well, they're cute little kids. It very much feels like a young romance, but thrust in the middle of a mother trying to kill her daughter.
Yeah, and shadow creatures.
Kid getting entombed, and shadow creatures
trying to pull you into the depths.
into a skulkophagus.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that term so much. I'm going to be using that.
I like that she's taller than you too.
I'm going to go home to my wife and be like, "Hun, when 50 years from now, when we're dead, we're getting buried in skulkophaguses." Skulkophagi.
Isn't that a Pokemon?
Submit it to Nintendo.
Yeah.
Yo, it could be one of the next Mega Man bosses.
Skulkophagi.
Man. He just has like two tombstones. Bone saws ready.
Yeah, I had said like I like that she's taller than you. And I can't really explain why. It's just like a nice, refreshing. Maybe it's because I'm so tall. I'm like 6'3" or 4 that nobody.
Yeah, I'm like perched up and you're hunched
I know, I'm
down.
I'm
trying to stay up for people watching on YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just a weird like. It seemed refreshing that it's like this boy meets girl love story, but she's taller than you.
Yeah, yeah. I guess to move on though, one of the things I wanted to talk about was I liked and disliked the controls. The controls scream early PlayStation
PS1.
2. Oh my! Not better than PS1, thankfully, because the camera is not fixed like with PS1.
Oh, it still kind of sucks.
It's still pretty fixed though, because so the way it works is that the camera itself, the camera position is fixed, but you can move the camera. Like think of it like a security cam, where you can just move the camera around to however you want to see or to wherever you want to see. But the problem is that if you're trying to go into the corner that the camera is located, then it's like trying to
feel it trying to like.
It's trying to like. It's trying so hard. Like if the camera could speak, it'd be like, just trying to.
It's almost like
I'll see you. I swear.
It's almost like a guy like in a neck brace trying to look down. He's just kind of like you can feel the struggle. Like, oh! No, just picturing that.
That's all security cameras are actually just guys in neck braces, hung up on the wall. Just
I gotta pee, but I can't see where I'm aiming.
Can you replace my bucket?
Oh,
that's disgusting. Yeah. I don't know. What a weird idea that just popped in my head. All security cameras in this world are replaced by guys in neck braces. What's wrong with me?
Just a guy in the corner, just. Anyway,
no, it's never going to be quiet anywhere they're at. It's like it would be so creepy. You're in a museum and you just hear, like you don't see anybody. You hear it echoing down hallways.
Why are they all dying?
It's
just the struggle.
It's a very Flintstones approach to like home security, but instead of like a dinosaur that they have perched up in the corner,
it's just a guy. Neck brace man. We're putting together a whole team of really crappy enemies for Mega Man 12.
Neck brace man.
Neck brace man.
With Skulkophagi.
Skulkophagi.
Yeah. And he actually has two skulkophaguses.
Oh boy.
Oh my god. I don't know. That was weird.
It's a weird time. So the ending, I know you didn't beat it, but did you watch the ending?
No, I didn't get it. I read the ending about how. I wrote it down, but it just kind of. I don't know. I didn't get to read too much into detail with it, so
Okay.
feel free to spoil it. I don't mind.
Okay.
And spoiler alert for everyone else watching, listening, and you should know that by now.
Yeah. So as you said, the queen, who is literally titled the queen, her whole reason of keeping queen, no queen, don't do this.
There's certain I've had this issue with games recently. I haven't played Last of Us 2 yet because I can't handle sad stuff right now. I just can't do it.
Not with the way the world is.
No.
Last of Us is too real right now.
Apparently the developer said something where it's like the first game was about love and the second game is about hate. And if that first game's about love,
yeah,
and that stuff, all that shit happens, I don't want to see what hate's about.
I know.
That's terrifying.
Well, all that to say, the wife, jeez, the queen is trying
Yorda's
to
mother.
Take over Yorda's body to become young again and youthful and whatever. And so
it rubs the lotion on the skin. I can't do that impression of that guy.
So you're basically like, yo, don't do that. And she's like, yo, I do what I want. And you're like, yo, I've got this magical sword, so you want to run that by me again? Like you do find like a sword instead of just the random stick that you have through the whole game.
Yes. Yeah.
With like all these runes on it and stuff. And actually it's the same. It's in the opening, like when they're locking you up, one of the guys says like, go get the sword. And he goes and gets, so you find the sword. You have like a boss battle with the mom or the
What's
queen.
the fight like?
It's pretty cool. I've seen a lot of criticism about like, why is there this random like final boss battle in this game that is
it was probably just
puzzly
old game design because it's like you always have to have that boss.
Gotta have the final boss.
Yeah, have the final boss.
I actually liked it a lot. So basically, there's like, so when Yorda gets pulled into the shadows and you don't rescue her, it kind of does that like big.
Oh, that's
blooming.
Heartbreaking when that happens.
Yeah, I know, every time. And then when it hits you, you turn to stone. So she kind of like emits those rays or beams or whatever at this area of effect, and it can't hit you or you'll turn to stone, just like always. So you have to. You're like she's in this throne, and you're like a long way away from her, and you have to run up to her, and you have to hide behind stuff so that the things don't hit you. And you get up to her and you smack her with the sword, but she's got this bubble shield thing, and then it knocks you flying back, and you actually break one of your horns off.
Okay.
So he kind of like snaps his horn. He's like actually bleeding like fairly profusely. The sword goes flying. You have to go get it again before the next beam comes. You do this a couple times, and then it breaks her shield, and you just straight up stab her. And she says something along the lines of like, "You'll never make it out of here alive." Cue Ocarina of Time. Castle crumble.
Starts crumbling.
Yep. And basically, she sends you flying against the wall again. You break your other horn. You're knocked out. I kind of wish you only had the one horn because I like the asymmetry of it.
Yeah.
But he's bleeding out.
Now you just look derpy.
I know. Now he's just got like these little like. Hellboy was cool because he just straight up rips them off, and they're just these like jagged, like broken things that he like files down into like a nice little nub. But now with Ico, you just have this like broken tooth that's almost quite there. But so basically, Yorda finds you. She goes anti-Yorda. Like she's all black and
Nega Yorda.
Yeah, pretty much. She's all black, and she has this really cool like blue like glitch effect around her, which is really cool. And she basically like carries you to this watery area where there's a boat, puts you in like Moses and just says bye. And then the castle crumbles around her. Then the credits roll. You wake up in the boat, which you've mentioned that I'm a graphic designer. So now I feel like I have to say I hate the layout of the credits. There's two different like
columns,
sections that go up on either side of the screen, but they're like all jagged, like your eye is bouncing around trying to read it, and I was just like, wow, I hate this so much. Anyway, not relevant to anyone but me or graphic designers out there. You wash up on this beach, you wake up, you're wandering around the beach, and then you find Yorda also washed up on the beach, which ruined the ending for me because I thought it was so like poetic. Again, like how you help her through all this stuff.
She goes Super Saiyan and pushes you off.
Yeah, she pushes you away to save you, to repay you for like saving her. And it's like this like, oh, this tragically beautiful thing, which Team Ico has mastered if you've played any of their other games.
Well, there's only two others.
Well, yeah, they're
Did you play The Last Guardian?
Briefly, but I it took like 15 years to come out, and I don't know why I haven't, but I do want to eventually.
I tried it a little bit. It's a very much a hybrid of. It's pretty much like Eco, but a little bit different. It's in an interesting way.
Yeah, that's what I got from it. But so I was like, oh man, like this beautifully tragic thing, like she saves your life, and you know she's the shadow person, because I think the queen says as she's dying, like, even if you make it out of here, like she can't go with you or something like that. And I was just, this is so tragically beautiful. And then you just find her, and it's like, oh, happy ending. And it's like, I'm all for happiness, especially for nowadays.
But it has to feel earned.
It didn't.
So when you do that, it'd be different if she shoved it off. If she shoved off and then jumped into the boat with you.
Yeah.
And then passed out on the boat.
Because
and then you're kind of going like, oh, that would be cool too. Because then the credits would roll. You'd be like, what the fuck? And then you're just so concerned, like, what just happened here?
Yeah.
And then in the post credits, that's when you would see it, but. Yeah, the way they did it, I can understand. I would agree with you. I think it's a much stronger ending just to have Eco wake up. No, it would have been really heartbreaking. Like, have maybe a piece of jewelry that Yorda wears, like wash up on the beach, or something, or just like a part,
like a scrap of her like dress or something.
Yeah, just a little bit, something that's like. That has a visual like that you can visually recognize as being part of her.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything in her character design that would have really done that in that scheme. But if they would have had something like, say she had like a necklace, then that's where all the power emanated from, or something like that when she went Super Saiyan or whatever.
Oh, and even with that, like the shadow form or whatever was so cool. I was like ready to, because she finds you, picks him up, and then I was like, oh, you're gonna get to play as Yorda, like it's gonna flip,
like what Shadow of the Colossus did, like, a little bit,
yes.
Which we'll go into when we talk about Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah. But like, it would have been super cool to have like a escaping from the crumbling castle sequence as Yorda, and you have to protect Eco the whole time. Like, I'm really mad that they didn't do anything like that, and it just jumps to the final cutscene.
I would agree with that. That would bother me too. It's always frustrating when something, when it's movie or game, whatever it may be, it was when you like so much of it and the ending just kind of like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah. Like, how does she even get there? Like, it's established that she can't come with you. She's all shadowy, and then somehow she floats from a crumbling castle, not in a boat, onto the shore, and she's not shadowy anymore. Like, it just felt like kind of a cop-out where they're like, I guess we should do a happy ending because you fell in love with this character. And it just felt kind of like...
You spent all this time... they could have really made it into... she could have become like a very... Well, not Christ-like, because then she would have known about her doom the whole time, but... Shout out to the Final Fantasy X episode. We talk a lot about religion.
Oh, I bet, when the final boss is called Sin.
Yes. I don't know. That is kind of a bummer. But
yeah.
Is there?
Do you know about the watermelon ending though?
No.
So
what the hell is the watermelon ending?
So for some reason, and this is really cute and almost saves it for me. For some reason, when you play New Game Plus, which doesn't change anything. Because it's not like you're like, oh, I get to keep all my equipment. Nope.
You don't even get to keep the sword.
You don't even get to keep the sword. Well, there is one small weird thing. So there's like a mace that you can find. And when you do a certain puzzle, a mace comes flying through the window. And you can have it for a little while. And then so when you do New Game Plus, if you do that puzzle again, it's one of the only secrets, I think, in the game. On your second playthrough, when you do that again, instead of the mace coming through, because you already have it, it's like a straight up lightsaber. And that's like a beam.
Why is it called a watermelon secret then?
Well, this isn't the watermelon. I was just talking about the second playthrough. The only thing about the lightsaber, it gets longer when you're holding Yorda's hand. So take that for whatever you want. Anyway,
he's a shower, not a grower, or both.
Grower, not a shower.
He's a grower, not a shower.
So yeah, it's weird, but it's super long. It takes up like the whole screen. I mean, my man's got something to show,
and grow.
Anyway, and it grows. But no, so I'm so mad I even brought that up, because now I'm going to talk about this very pure and innocent ending. when you play through again the second time, nothing changes. You get pushed off the boat, or you don't get pushed off the boat. You're in the boat. You get pushed off of the shore.
Rock the boat.
Yeah, he just falls into the water and drowns. No, you wake up on the beach, but this time when you get closer to Yorda, there's like a pile of watermelons. And so if you pick it up and bring it to her at the end, there's like they're sharing the watermelon together and they're like eating it, and it's super cute. But I don't know why it's only in the second playthrough.
Just a pile of watermelons.
Just a bunch of watermelons.
That sounds like something that I told you about off mic. That Kiviak shit. The off mic, I was telling about some gross foods, and there's this gross food that is from the Inuits. The Inuits. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, so I apologize if I'm not.
You're offending all of our Inuit viewers right now.
I could be. I don't know.
Leave a comment if you're an Inuit.
But there is. Hold on. Let me. I'm going to just read it off it because it's Kiviak is disgusting. I don't know who came up with this idea, but Kiviak is a food where you take up to food definitely in quotations. It's from Greenland and it's made of little auks, which little auks is a type of bird. Apparently, I didn't know that either. And what they do is they take up. It can be up to 500 of these birds. It's a bunch. It's 500
so
dead
many.
birds, and they will stuff 500 dead birds into a dead seal carcass, and into a dead seal carcass. Packed into seal skin, beaks and feathers included. As much air as possible is removed from the seal skin before it is sewn up before it is sewn up and sealed with seal fat, which repels flies, and it is hidden under a heap of stones with a large rock placed on the top to keep the air out. But
how long is it in there though?
Over the course of 3 months. I heard 15.
I thought it was 15, yeah.
It was 15 when I first heard about it, according to Wikipedia, but who knows. Over the course of 3 months, the birds ferment are eaten during the Arctic winter, particularly on birthdays and weddings. I heard 15. They ferment for 15 months.
It honestly doesn't matter the amount of time because I'm still going to throw up.
Anything past us, ever. Doesn't even have to be a second.
I was like, how long's the shelf life for 500 dead birds?
in a
dead seal.
In seal skin. Like, and I don't know, it's just a stupid, like, it sounds like the cute version of that. You know, you wash up on a beach and there's just a pile of watermelons just sitting there for 15 months and you just feed it to your girlfriend. I love you. Merry Christmas. Will you marry me?
Will you marry me?
The watermelon proposal. You know that old adage.
The classic watermelon proposal.
You leave out a pile of watermelons for 15 months.
Yeah, that's actually how I proposed to Driana. Her mom was trying to take over her body to become immortal, and so I stabbed her with a magic sword.
And then I fed her watermelons. After I, got my horns broken off, obviously, but she pushed me off in a boat, and I thought I was never going to see her again. And then we had watermelon, and I got this ring now. Doesn't everybody? That's just how it works. that old of you.
The old classic. Romance is not dead.
You're a romantic at heart.
Hopeless romantic.
Hopeless romantic. Oh my gosh. Okay. So is there anything left to talk about Eco that we haven't gotten? I mean, we've
at this
gone
point
the
of
gambit
devolving.
With this one.
I don't even think anything could bring us back to that game. Talking about 500 dead birds stuffed in a seal skin.
Oh. So funny.
Anyway,
there's a grosser one, but I won't say it on mic. I'll tell you after.
I almost threw up just from this one, so I don't want to mess up your mic with my puke.
The other one's grosser. Shout out, or not shout out, write in if you want me to say the other one. At some
and write in if you don't.
Because this one should be out till October.
Yeah.
So it's going to be kind of weird because I'm going to get all these, if anyone even wants it, I'm going to get a bunch of letters like, tell me what it is. And I'm like,
tell me the gross thing.
What is, I don't know what's happening.
What could be worse than that?
So that is Eco, I guess.
Yep.
But no, thank you all for listening. This was a really fun episode. I mean, we went on a bunch of different tangents, but I do really like how we broke down the game and its story and what we liked and what we didn't like, and how there are interpretations of like certain, is it like allegorical, like that kind of like that kind of thing. And even what is it? I believe I was reading somewhere that this game was meant to be super allegorical. I don't know what the allegory was for.
Yeah, that's surprising considering how little they actually give you. It's like, just kind of figure it out. What does it mean? It's up to you. It's art. It's whatever it means to you.
that isn't, because allegories are usually more direct,
Yeah.
like Chronicles of Narnia is it's very allegorical. It's
Yeah.
very Christian, versus when you look at Lord of the Rings, it's also very Christian, but it's done much less over the, like, it's not beating you over the head with it like Narnia is. Narnia is very like Aslan is Jesus.
Aslan is Jesus.
There you go.
Yep.
But yeah, so Eco it's a fun game. It definitely, I don't think it holds up all that well. I think it's better than it has a right to be for an early PS2 title. Like, looking back on it and looking at it within a modern context, it's not as good as it probably was when it was released, but it's still worth it. I still think it's worthwhile playing, even though I know I said I didn't beat it. Like, I'll be honest, it took me about like the first half an hour to an hour, I was kind of like forcing myself through it. And then after that first hour and a half is when I started to be like, oh no, I want to play this. I want to keep going. I want to see what the next puzzle is. Because at that point I feel like I need to get Yorda out of this place.
I know.
I was
start getting attached.
Yeah, I felt attached. So that's good storytelling. And once again, without a word of dialogue between the two of them. Really.
Yeah. And I'll talk. We can save it for the Shadow Colossus because they also do the kind of nonsense language in that, and there's something I really like about that. So that's a little teaser for next episode.
So yeah, Andrew, thank you for joining me for this episode for Eco.
For joining me.
Yeah, because it's a weird crossover.
We're joining each other.
Gross.
Our podcasts are holding hands.
But no. I know people watching this on YouTube, you don't need to know all these socials because you're already there. But for the people listening to my podcast, where can the good people find you online?
So if you're not watching this on YouTube, I do also have a podcast feed where sometimes I'll just upload the straight up audio on all of the things. So iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts. It's just at the EXP Point, and that's the same for all the socials, Instagram, Twitter, all the things.
I love that continuity. I know that's that should be obvious. Like, all mine is Still Loading Pod.
Yeah.
Facebook, I guess mine real quick. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Still Loading Pod on all of them. Feel free to reach out to me. I like talking to people. You can also email me, stillloadingcontact@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, give it a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you are using. That helps gain exposure for the show, and it also lets me know what you think. And hopefully I do a 5-star worthy job. That's the kind that I would like.
Seconded. Do you have a Patreon?
I do.
I do too.
Patreon.com/stillloadingpod. Even just $1 a month will help grow the show.
Same.
I actually need to work on my goals, though, or the rewards, I should say, and goals.
Yep.
Well, what's your Patreon?
Oh, it's just the same. Patreon.com/the EXP
And the most important shout out for me, it's not directly related to me, but it's a thing I like to promote, the Bit by Bit Foundation. The Bit by Bit Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to put video games and video game consoles in the hands of children receiving inpatient care at children's hospitals and regular hospitals, just all hospitals, whichever ones they can get in contact with. You can go to the bitbybitfoundation.org and check it out and consider donating. And that will do it for this episode on Eco. So, Andrew, once again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I will see you all next time.
Peace.